Welcome to the Brain Development Podcast. We're here to show parents there is a pathway to healing behavioural and learning symptoms of their autistic, dyslexic, ADHD, OCD, Asperger's, dyspraxic, dysgraphic child. My purpose is to help empower parents to understand how they can build their child's brain from the bottom up to invoke change. And today, I feel very honoured, we have Sharik Peck with us, who founded the ResiMax, and the ResiMax as a device is a key component of how we at Brain Development treat our patients, our children. And Sharik has advanced degrees in physical therapy and rehabilitation counselling. Over 33 years of helping people eliminate pain from their lives, Sharik's experienced several disabling accidents, including a broken neck and back, a stroke, a dislocated shoulder, and years of chronic pain. And his wife also suffered from chronic neck and jaw pain. And out of these experiences, an intense desire to help many others in chronic pain, it drove Sharik to figure out a natural solution for pain, and his research focused on resonance and its effect on the human nervous system. The Pain Tuner Pro is the result of over 15 years of research and development, and it's been awarded 3 US patents and 1 in China. The ResiMax has completed 2 clinical trials, and it currently is involved in a 3rd clinical trial. And I'd love for Sharik to tell us more about that. And you've obviously been on quite a long and quite a journey. It would be incredible to start with, what is resonance?
Well, resonance is a beautiful form of energy. We call it, I guess the non-clinical term would be vibration. Mm-hmm. But vibration can include things like a massive jackhammer pounding. And vibration can include so many things. But resonance is a pure form of vibration. You might think of it in terms of music. A violin and another violin can create a resonant state. If they play the same note together, it just reverberates and it creates a unique energy. And so what we have created in our tools is a resonant therapy, which helps to get the brain and the nervous system essentially meshing with a very gentle range of vibration.
So when you use the ResiMax, how do you tune into your own body in using it? How does it work like that? Because surely everybody's different.
Everybody is so completely different, and it works just as ranges or frequencies of musical notes from a piano work. Some notes on the piano may mesh with some individuals and they may match their frequency, and others may mesh with another group of individuals. What's unique about our device is we captured 3,000 frequency points within the range of the cat purring harmonic range. Essentially, that runs from about 20 to 120 hertz, and that's the harmonic frequency range that gives us a huge amount of variety in songs that we play back into the nervous system. Where that becomes really unique is that your vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, a branch of that nerve is responsible for your vocalization. So when you held your little child and sang to him, now he's too big to hold very much right now these days, but when he was very small and crying or upset, and you sang to him or you cooed to him or you just spoke softly to him, that creates a resonant effect that his brain and nervous system are familiar with. It's like vagus nerve of him to vagus nerve of you,
wow.
The two of those creating a harmonic symphony. And so we just use those concepts to create a variety of resonant therapies that the nervous system meshes for almost everybody.
That device has really helped my son It's helped me. It's helped my mom. It's helped so many people that I know that have used it. It's helped change my son's brain. How did you even design something so advanced?
It's actually very simple, but it is a miracle. And the key is going back to those vocal cords. The same nerve that controls those vocal cords controls your heart and your breathing and your digestion. So essentially, if we tap into those frequencies that the body already inherently recognizes as part of the healing code, then we get the nervous system to start remembering how to calm itself down, which puts it into a healing state. So it's very simple, and yet it's very complex how we arrive to those, and how we actually take advantage of over 3,000 points to be able to create those songs for the nervous system.
How did you get to that point, though, of designing something like that? You have been on a huge journey. You've obviously gone through a lot of pain yourself with all of the things that you've been through, and your wife. So what really made you get to that point of utilizing vibration and understanding it to that deep level?
As a physical therapist, I've studied all kinds of things, from ultrasound to muscle therapies and guns and massage tools of every kind, and electrical stimulation of every variety. I've looked at all kinds of things, but the one thing that I had never studied very much, because it didn't seem like there was much to it, was this concept of vibration. But I had tried all kinds of massagers, and they feel good for a little while, but they don't seem to have a long-term benefit. Well, one night I woke up with it. This was back in August of 2010, I believe, and I woke up with this concept, or this message that just kept going through my head, and it said, Sharik, vibration will heal the human nervous system. Now you go figure out how. And I woke up with that, and I stayed awake the rest of the night trying to figure out, what does that mean? But from that day, I have studied all kinds of things that make a vibrational energy, and I found out that some of them will cause harm.
Yeah.
Some of them will interrupt a headache, but they won't put a person back into a better state of healing, and so they're soon right back into their previous state. And some of them, some of the resonant vibrational frequencies just seem to have a very, very small benefit. I mean, you've got devices like electric toothbrushes, and I went through 800 electric toothbrushes to find, is there anything with those that might help somebody? And, many of our therapy tools that are used in clinics are based on an electric toothbrush type of resonant energy. And I found that they were just not strong enough for most individuals. They will not affect a completely disorganized nervous system. So I stopped using toothbrushes, and I went on to different things, and I experimented and I studied and I researched. But it was when I found the resonant frequencies of that purring range of a cat that it started to make a lot of sense. That energy range speeds up bone healing by 33%. It has a calming effect on nearly everybody, even though they may not like a cat, but they like that frequency range. And it's been shown in numerous studies to relieve pain. And so that's where we started focusing and narrowing our energy range down to a level that has helped so many people now.
It's just incredible. And tell me about some of the frequencies and the settings on the Pain Tuner Pro.
So,
and the colors.
It has 10 basic levels, manual settings, if you will, and you can tune it in through those manual settings. They're kind of like the knob on a radio. You get close, and then there's a fine-tuning level that you can do with it. The fine-tuning level is actually in these various colors that you see on this button. This is what we call our algorithm button, our patterns. And each pattern, the blue, is a very calming 4.5-minute cycle that repeats itself over and over and over. And those patterns are designed to represent a day at the beach with the waves coming in slowly, 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 and it builds and builds, and then it slowly lowers and comes into the shore. And the second one, the green one, is meant to take that same exact pattern, the same song, and speed it up 3 times faster. So it's 1.5 minutes instead of 4.5 minutes to complete the exact same energy pattern. So the nervous system responds extremely well to these patterns. The third one is actually reversed. If I want to wake up the central nervous system for a child or an adult, I'll use this red to help grab the attention of the brain. If those first two are like a day at the beach, the third one is like putting you up on the tallest skyscraper in the United Kingdom, somewhere there in London, I imagine, and dropping you off of that on a very fast ride, or like the rides that just go crazy and throw your nervous system for a loop. The red does that, but in a controlled way.
Yeah.
And it sings a song that helps essentially grab the brain's attention and put it back into balance. Now again, it's a cycle, so it's 3.5 minutes on that cycle. So you're seeing how 4.5 minutes on one, 1.5 minute on a second, 3.5 minutes on a third. Well, the fourth one just meanders all over the place. It's what I call white noise. You'll see it's white, but the white noise will take you on a journey. It's like our meditation mode on steroids, because it continues to keep sending input to the brain that keeps it focused and attentive. And each of those patterns will help the nervous system find its balance, if you will. It's like singing a lullaby to a child that they get used to. And that's part of their calm down process for going to bed at night. I don't know if you had this, but I certainly had this with my children. I've got 7 children, and they all seem to like these calm down songs at nighttime. And now I have grandchildren, and I hear them singing these same songs to their children.
Yeah.
And it's part of the routines that their nervous system, it recognizes that as a calm and healing time in their lives. And so they're passing the journey on, if you will. And so we love the variety that we've been able to put into the device to help people with that.
It's just such an incredible story as to how you've come to create this and the difference that it actually makes to people as they use it. So you've gone through some clinical trials, and we'll talk about some case studies and some individuals that have used it and what they've seen. And I'll share, mine as well. But what have you been going through on, to prove out on the clinical trials?
We could see thousands of people that have benefited from these tools, but the world needs to understand it in scientific analysis terms. They need scrutiny, and I'm so excited. Just a couple of days ago, our very first clinical trial was published in the journal Oral and Facial Pain and Headache. It's an international flagship journal for a number of professions that spans from Asia to North America. And in this particular study, they were looking at headaches that weren't being able to be treated by medications, and cluster headaches in particular that are just consistent chronic headaches happening up to 15 times or so a month. Well, I met with the researchers that were going to do this trial, because I'm the inventor. I'm not a very good researcher. So I met with this team of neurologists, and I said, here are the things that we have found very effective for headaches. And they said, okay, we need you to get to us a number of machines that work, and then get to us a number of machines that don't work but look like they work, because we've got to create a placebo scenario. And what they found is that those who were treated using those techniques that we showed them, the pressure points from the feet to the head and in the mouth, and there's essentially about 10 minutes of treatment that they went through each day, they had a significant reduction in their headaches. A significant, in the scientific world, we're very happy if there's what we call a 5% confidence interval, meaning that 95% of the people had an improvement in their condition. Well, our confidence interval was in the thousands, meaning
wow.
that 0.002%, meaning that essentially every person that utilized the tool in the techniques that we showed them had a significant reduction in their pain level, and those who did not use that used our placebo device had no significant improvements in their condition. But what's most important, Lara, is that it found that even after people stopped using the device, and they came back and took a look at them 6 weeks later and then 8 weeks later, and they said, wow, you're still having a significant reduction in your pain?
Wow.
Even though you haven't been using the device. How does that work?
Yeah, explain that. Explain that. Is that because you basically have reset how the nervous system vibrates? Like, what?
Essentially, you tuned the nervous system just like you would tune a musical instrument.
Wow.
And essentially, we taught their nervous system a song related to pain relief. And then their vocalization, their speaking, all of those things, when they kick in, their nervous system gets a cueing that says, oh, we don't need to be in that stress state that leads to headaches. We have learned a better way to feel and to be. And so that was our first clinical trial. Our second one is currently under review in another international body, but it studied dysmenorrhea. So going down into the abdominal region, and specifically for females that have severe cramping and pain. Mm-hmm. And this is looking at the other end of the vagus nerve. So you're looking at the high end, with all the headaches and things, looking at the bottom end with the all the abdominal and
wow.
and anyway, we've seen really neat results with our techniques that have been studied. We're excited to see those coming out in print so the rest of the world can understand it a little bit better.
Well, I've used it for exactly that. For both. Used it on my tummy, used it on my head, I used it on my vagus nerve, I've used it on the back of my neck, I've used it on achy areas of my body or when I pulled a muscle. I mean, it is the most amazing device. So tell me, for our listeners, how have you seen it have a huge impact on children that are neurodiverse? Because you've got different attachments as well to help encourage the vagus nerve, help the rooting reflex, and also, help with speech. It's helped with so many other areas. Tell me a bit about that and what you've seen.
Boy, there are so many things that we have seen it help with, from nonverbal autistic children saying their first words or organizing their first words within days of starting to use it. Mm-hmm. But it's typically combined with a lot of other therapies, and as you know, it's very important. But if I were to say one thing that's probably the most important thing that we have seen, and I'm interested to know if you've seen that with your own son, it is teaching their nervous system how to self-calm.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
emotional and physical regulation. And the way that that actually happens is we'll use our device, for example, the wings, the side wings on that. And we'll use that to scrape over parts of the body from the toes on up that help the brain make better sense of the body map. We know from research that children, especially on the spectrum, they do not feel their body completely.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it very hard for them to control their body. So we oftentimes see that their coordination is not nearly as good as would be expected. That their writing patterns are not very good, or their drawing or their coloring. They can't stay inside the box because they don't sense and feel where the lines of the box are. And so using that as a sensory integration tool from the tips of the toes and the tips of the fingers all the way up helps the brain and the cerebellum make better sense of where the child is in space. That is what helps with apraxia, which is the poor coordination of muscles. It helps the brain organize and make sense of where all the muscles and their attachments are, because we've flooded the nervous system with this information that tells it, hey, this is exactly where your left hand and fingers are.
Yeah.
And as your brain makes sense of that, we see that it also calms it down. Because, well, I think of it this way. One of the biggest panics that we can imagine is from not knowing exactly or being aware completely of how to make everything work right.
Mm-hmm.
It's, years ago, Lara, I had a stroke and learned to walk again and learn to communicate again and learn to learn again. One of the hardest things that I remember was the processing problem that I had in my brain. I knew I wanted to say something, but I couldn't find the words for it.
Yeah.
I could see the words, I could think the words, I couldn't say them. There was a discrepancy between the thinking and the understanding and the ability to put that information back out for people. That creates an anxiety that I still remember. And I have gotten much better, obviously, at being able to speak and to say the things that are in my heart and in my mind. But I remember how hard that was and how discouraging that was when I couldn't put it all together and communicate with somebody in a way that made sense for both of us.
And that device helped my son get his words. It was, I mean, I only had that piece of equipment initially with some red glasses and some smell, and I was using that device all over his body. It was only when I went and did an intensive to understand how to use other bits of equipment with it was, when you also then start climbing that trajectory. But it made a huge difference to him initially. And you could see the difference because I was stimulating his right side to activate his left brain, where his speech networks, where we were using those tongs in his mouth on his tongue to stimulate the vagus nerve, to integrate that rooting reflex. I was using it on his face. I was using it on his cranial nerves. And it's amazing. It's just the most amazing device. You've created something that, actually makes such a huge difference to people when they use it for a specific reason, whether it's to help their child bring online their body, their awareness of their body, or whether it's integrating reflexes, or whether it's reducing a tummy ache because they're not eating the right the right food and they're not digesting properly, or they might not have the right microbiome. And you can actually use it for all of those different things, as well as even I've used it for food poisoning or menstrual cycle, and I've used it for so many things because it's the first thing I pull out of my bag because it feels so nice. And I had a clinic at the weekend, and I put that device with the tongs on a little girl's neck to stimulate her vagus nerve, and it was resting up against her chest. And she just sat there and said, "I'm not giving this back to you. It just feels so good." And her mum actually had fibromyalgia. And as she picked it up and she sat there with it, she said, "Oh my God, I have to get one of these. It makes me feel so good." So why is that with the fibromyalgia?
And that is a funny thing, because as a physical therapist, I believe that I have caused more distress for people with fibromyalgia over the years by trying to do well-meaning therapies that would just irritate their nervous system, and they would call back a few days later and say, "Hey, I'm not coming in anymore. It hurt." And I love the fact that this, what we've created, it doesn't hurt. It speaks to their nervous system. One of the first things that we see with fibromyalgia, for example, is that with regular use, a person improves their sleep. Our people that are in such chronic pain with conditions like fibromyalgia, like chronic regional pain syndrome and trigeminal neuralgia, and some of these very painful conditions, the one thing we see with most all of them is their quality of sleep is terrible. Mm-hmm. And so as that brings them into a calm state, one of the things that we see the fastest is that they start improving their ability to sleep. And that sleeping, that's what opens up the factory doors so that their brain can create all of the neurotransmitters out of the food that they've eaten to be able to keep them moving for days and days to come. And so improving sleep is very important, but that calming influence. And one of the things you'll notice is we use all of the fibromyalgia hot spots as treatment points to get into the nervous system. In essence, we whisper to all of their spots and tell them it's okay to feel better. It's okay to be calm. It's okay to breathe. And by asking a person to hum while they're using the device, it just speeds up their ability to mesh with those resonant frequencies.
Talk to me about how it impacts, how it changes the vagus nerve.
Well, that in particular, it's not about vagus nerve stimulation, because lots of things can stimulate the vagus nerve for good or for bad. Mm-hmm. If you have a bad stimulus, the vagus nerve shuts down. If you have a good stimulus, it improves its tone. So we're all about creating vagus nerve efficiency, because the vagus nerve, when it's functioning at its highest, we have good sleep, we have good recovery, we have good digestion, all of the important things that help us to heal and get through our stressful times. Well, what this does, because those vocal cords, all they do is vibrate, and they're a direct branch of the vagus nerve, is we're teaching the vagus nerve a song that helps it remember how to get into its calm down mode. And that song helps it heal.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And you created a device to put into a child's mouth so that they can use that device on the end of the Rezzimax and actually stimulate inside the mouth and the rooting reflex. Tell me a bit about how that stimulates the tongue. It stimulates the ability for that child to be able to start speaking, to start stimulating the vocal cords, and actually develop those speech patterns.
The power of this in the mouth is that we're more sensitive in the mouth than we are anywhere else. It's so sensitive. And so when we place this in the mouth, we've got 4 cranial nerves that are, these cranial nerves are like the vagus nerve, the trigeminal nerve, the optic nerve, the olfactory. All of our senses are wrapped into these, what we call the 12 cranial nerves. And because of those powerhouses, we function. Your vision is controlled by, being able to see is the optic nerve, but there's 3 more cranial nerves that are all involved in the motion of your eye. And so all of these cranial nerves are players at the dance. Mm-hmm. If they don't know how to dance correctly and together, they're stepping on each other's toes, they're kicking each other. If this dance is not coordinated with all of these players in the cranial nerves, especially the vagus nerve, anytime one of those gets upset, it throws the healing and recovery system off. So one of the neat things that we have found with the little mouthpiece, and it just has lots of tiny little projections that give it access to send more information to the brain. And sometimes we'll put like a little drop of lemon or lime right on it, because I want the sense of smell enhanced. I want the sense of taste enhanced. We're going for more and more of those cranial nerves. Remember, we want them dancing together, right?
Yeah.
So when we put this in the mouth and we turn it on, oftentimes we'll hear a child or an adult start making sound to it. Just like putting them in front of a fan, their brain says, oh, I need to mesh with that. And so they oftentimes will make sound. But if you can take a light and hold it away from a child and start moving it back and forth, you'll see their eyes will follow that. Mm-hmm. And if you can encourage them to, and even say, hey, can your tongue do that too? While this sensory stimulus is going through all of the teeth, and their tongue and their eyes are going in these different directions together, we're learning how to coordinate. We're learning how to do the dance without getting in each other's way for the cranial nerves. And that has been phenomenal. I have heard of quite a number of individuals, non-verbal autistic children, that within a very short time, a day or 2 or 3, of using this little new therapy, are organizing their first words and being able to get the motors to dance correctly and be able to make them work. That's been fun.
I'm just blown away. You are absolutely the most incredible individual. I'm so pleased that you could come on the podcast to give a flavour of what the ResiMax can actually do for not just children with other neurodiverse or neurodevelopmental disorders, but for everybody. Everybody should have a ResiMax. It's just the most amazing piece of kit to have in the house. And it's so multimodal. And you do use it for treating children in clinic in a multimodal way with other devices to actually create that dance, to stimulate all of those different senses. Thank you. Thank you for designing it, but thank you for also sharing. I appreciate it.
It's truly an inspired tool, because I'm just not smart enough to come up with it all, but I've been nonstop thinking about it and ways to help people for many years now, and I love seeing the culmination of these. These things are all coming together to help so many more people.
So last thing before we leave, but what's next for ResiMax and the Tuner Pro?
Well, we've created its sister product. Our practitioners love this. We made about 600 of them, mm-hmm. and then we took it off the market for a year while we redesigned it completely. This will be back up on the market in 2025, completely revamped and able to help. This one's really fun because we can stick it into a stuffed animal, or we can stick it into a backpack, and instead of just having those those algorithms or those patterns, we now have the same patterns, but we have 3 frequency levels for it. And with these different frequency levels, we can change the song or the intensity that we're singing to the nervous system. And then we've made them so that you can push these 2 buttons. It's now on a, I don't know if you can see that flashing in and out, but it's now on a 15-minute timer.
Wow.
So the ability to put that next to a child as they're in their calm down mode for sleeping is incredible. My wife uses one of these every night to shut her brain off to get to sleep, and it's incredible. Or you can push these 2 buttons and change it from a 15-minute timer to a 30-minute timer. And we've been putting some features into these devices that are just helping more and more and more people. That little mouthpiece attachment, we just finally had it completely developed earlier in 2024. And we just keep seeing more and more results. But I think probably one of the most favorite is that we have got some brilliant practitioners worldwide who are developing therapies that I never saw possible with our device. There's a brilliant doctor and set of doctors called quantum neurologists in the United States that have figured out how to wake up the communication between specific organs that may not be functioning very well.
No.
And they're just drastically changing chronic conditions.
Wow.
And it is so fun. So I don't know where the end is. One of the things that blew me away this year was to see a doctor that has been training Olympic athletes and professional athletes, and he does primitive reflex work on these high-level athletes. You would think, okay, I understand needing to do this for a child on the spectrum or neurodiverse child, but how is it that we take somebody that's already at such a high level of world competition, and by working on primitive reflexes and using this sensory stimulus, we are organizing their brain, and their results are phenomenal.
Wow.
And so we're seeing more and more things that I never realized this tool would do. We're just seeing it being able to help in so many areas. And that's probably just because it's very good at helping improve vagus nerve efficiency.
Well, I'm exceptionally pleased that that message came through on that night, and that you listened and you started working out how to create that device, because you're impacting lives. And I'm very grateful that you've come on this podcast to share. Thank you.
You're welcome. Our next step will be to get an on-site class in the UK, right?
Definitely, and I'm with you. I'll help you all the way. Thanks, Sharik.
Thank you.